Then the other one is you've got these type of CTs are usually you see in pad mount applications. They fit onto the spade terminal connections. Usually they have you know, some sort of device where it'll slide onto that bus bar. Now, one thing important about these CTs, and we're going to talk about it a little bit later, is that they can withstand higher temperatures because these are in pad mount transformers, so they can take temperatures up to 85 degrees Celsius. And we're going to talk about that because that's really, really important when we get into rating factor discussions. Somebody's saying all they see is windmills. If you are only seeing windmills, let me know. Otherwise, we should be on a slide showing CTs in a pad mount transformer. Okay, some people are saying they can see CTs. I see the slides. Okay, it might be one person having a problem there, so maybe try to reset your the webinar connection. Okay. So this is a typical CT you see in pad mounts, and we're going to talk about that because that's going to be important. These go up to 85 degrees Celsius. That's a very important type of CT. Another side, CTs, you see them get larger. This is for a lot of different cables. You'll see these in sort of switchgear applications. Sometimes you'll see these on in metering cabinets as well, the large pad mount cabinets. And then there's obviously primary metering, which is for large commercial industrial sites. We're not going to talk that much about primary metering. We're going to talk about mostly secondary metering in this presentation. And then you sometimes have slip-over CTs, which are used sometimes for a power check between at a tie point, sometimes just measuring that current coming off the bushings. So you'll see those sometimes. But again, we're going to focus primarily on secondary metering applications. So there's three different classes of CTs. You have your low voltage, medium voltage, and high voltage. Low voltage is used in secondary metering. Medium voltage is used in primary metering, and high voltage is in the substation application. So in this particular presentation, we're going to talk about the low voltage, the 600 volt, the secondary metering. So what I want you to come away with on this presentation is to understand how to read this nameplate. So one of the things that we do, we make things complicated, is the nameplate on CT sometimes is difficult to understand. So I'm going to walk through all of the different items that are on that nameplate so you can understand that. And so when you look at a CT, you know exactly what you're looking at. All right. So let's go ahead and get started. We're going to talk about the first thing we're going to do when you look at a nameplate. You're going to see this right here. It's NSV 0.6 kV. So you might say to yourself, well, what is that? Well, that's an engineer being a little too complicated. Essentially what that's saying is your nominal system voltage is 0.6 kV. So that's just saying that your voltage level, this is a 600 volt instrument transformer, 600 volt CT. So that's just one of the things you're going to need to know on this nameplate. There's going to be 10 other items we're going to go through, but this one's pretty basic. Nominal system voltage, 0.6 kV, so 600 volt CT. Next thing we'll talk about is ratio. So ratio is that, that direct correlation between your primary current and your secondary current, all right? So for 600 volt metering CTs, the secondary current is always set at 5 amps. Now, sometimes when you have protection CTs, they'll be 1 amp CTs, but when you're looking at 600 volt CTs like the one here, you're primarily looking at a 5 amp output. So a 500 to 5 would say that if you have 500 amps on your primary, you would have 5 amps on your secondary, and this is a linear relationship between the two. All right. And so one thing that people talk about is a meter multiplier. So a meter multiplier is simply dividing the 500 by 5. So in this case, a 500 to 5 CT would have a meter multiplier of 100. So if you look down here on your nameplate, you're going to see a 500 to 5. So this is a 505 CT. It has a meter multiplier of 100. All right. So if you have 500 on the primary, you get 5 on the secondary. That's pretty simple. So far we understood that this is a 600 volt CT because it says NSV 0.6 kV, and we know the ratio is 500 to 5. Pretty simple so far. Come on. My slideshow's stuck. Yep, there we go. Sorry about that. All right. The next thing we want to look at is your accuracy. And let me just, okay, yeah. So the next slide is accuracy. So let's talk about accuracy. This is something we're going to cover in a lot more detail, but I want to give you a couple of basics. So the IEEE standard that we're dealing with for these product lines is IEEE standard C5713 2016. You can see that right there. And in that standard, they lay out 4 different accuracy classes for CTs. Now, this is really important. First thing I want to share is the 0.6 class. 0.6 class says that the accuracy of your CT is only 0.6%, plus or minus 0.6%. And what IEEE says is that that is not good enough for revenue grade. You should not be metering on that percentage of accuracy. You need to be more accurate than that. So 0.6% is instrument or indicating instrument only. It is not revenue grade. When you get to the next level, the 0.3%, that's considered revenue grade. So plus or minus 0.3% is considered, that is good enough accuracy so that you can meter and charge customers for. Now, this is also known as standard accuracy. So in the terminology of CTs, you may hear the term standard accuracy CT. Standard accuracy is this level right here, this 0.3%. That is a revenue grade standard accuracy current transformer. Now, IEEE standards go on to give you 2 more different levels of accuracy. They have high accuracy, which is 0.15% accurate, and then 0.15S, which is a special high accuracy CT. And to be honest, there's actually another class which is actually better than 0.15S, and that is what we're going to talk about as well, and that's down there on the bottom, the high accuracy extended range. That's actually performs better than the special high accuracy rating of what's in the IEEE standard. So there's really 2 things you have to come out of this, this particular slide with, is that there's standard accuracy CTs, 0.3% revenue grade, and then there's down at the bottom, they're 0.15S accuracy, high accuracy extended range. Those are the 2 main CTs that you see available from manufacturers today. You typically don't see any that are in just these 2 classes alone or in the 0.6% class. So you either have a revenue grade or you have a high accuracy extended range, okay? So if you look at the nameplate, you see this ACCY period, that's saying accuracy, right? And then it says 0.15S, so that is saying that it's a 0.15S special high accuracy CT, but then it says after that B minus 0.2. What that is your burden, okay? And what that nameplate is telling you is that as long as you don't have a burden of more than 0.2 ohms on the secondary side, you are going to be able to maintain that accuracy. Now, burden used to be a bigger deal when we had more electromechanical meters, but now with the technology today, burden isn't as much of a big issue. So usually we don't key in on burden too much anymore, but that is what that is. That's what that terminology means. It means this is a 0.15S accuracy class CT that can handle a burden up to 0.2 ohms. So that's what that means on that little part of that, that nameplate, okay? And we're stuck again. Apologize. I don't know why it does that. Okay, so next slide, we're going to talk about rating factor. Rating factor is really, really important, guys. This is the maximum primary current that your CT can handle, okay? So if you take a look at this chart that's over here on the left, a 200 amp CT, a 200 to 5 amp or 200 to 5 ratio CT with a rating factor of 4 can handle 800 amps on the primary. So the rating factor is just a multiple of the nominal current of the CT. So if you have a nominal current of 200 amps, the rating factor of 4, that means you can go up to 800 amps and can operate at that, at continuous current at 800 amps, okay? Hopefully that makes sense. So in this case, you have a 500 to 5 CT with a rating factor of 3. That means it can handle 1500 amps and so on. 1000 amps, a rating factor of 2, that can handle 2000 amps, all right? So if we look at this particular CT example down here, this nameplate, you see this has a rating factor of 2 at 85 degrees. What that's telling you is that CT can handle, this has a ratio of 500 to 5, that CT can handle 1000 amps at 85 degrees. Now, before even knowing or even looking at the CT, I know right away that this is a pad mount style CT. And the reason I know that is because pad mount CTs usually have the 85 degree rating factor on the nameplate. So I know right away that that is used in pad mount transformers. Rating factor 2, 85 degrees. I know this can handle 1000 amps on the top side, okay? Hopefully that's clear. And we're stuck again. All right. So one thing about rating factor that's important to know is that the rating factor will go down as temperature goes up. And there's a question up here. Let me just take a peek at it real quick. What would the rating factor be at 55? Yeah, it's a great question. So as your temperature goes down, your rating factor goes up. So typically you won't see all of the rating factors listed on the nameplate. However, if you go to the manufacturer's paperwork or their product sheet, you'll typically see the rating factor at different degrees temperature, all right? Typically, you'll see the rating factor at 55 normally on this nameplate, unless it is used on the pad mount transformers. Then you're going to want to see that 85 degree number. There's another question, does age of the CT affect the accuracy? Sadly, no. These things last a long time. It could be that, you know, over 20 years, potentially you might have some problems, but they do last a long time in the field. So they shouldn't affect the accuracy, but it depends on where it's being applied. Yep. All right, so those are some questions on chat, thank you. All right, so rating factor goes down as the temperature goes up. So if you take a look at this chart here, you see your rating factor as the temperature goes up goes down further, right? So for example, you take a look at the chart that we have here. You have a 600 to 5 ratio CT, has a rating factor of 3 at 30 degrees, but it goes down to 2.2 at 55, right? So basically what it's saying is as the ambient temperature gets higher, your CTs you can't run at a higher current because you've already got too much ambient temperature. Hopefully that makes sense. So in case of a 1000 amp CT, right, in this case 1000 to 5, it has a rating factor of 2 if it's operating at 30 degrees Celsius, right? So it can go up to 2000 amps, but when the temperature is hotter, when you're up to 55 degrees Celsius, it can only handle 1500 amps, okay? So it's important that you think about that. You know, we've got people from all over the country on this call, so different regions are going to have different concerns about rating factor, all right? So if you're in the north, I was up in Minnesota about a month ago, and they don't have the issue with temperature as much as, say, a Florida or California or Nevada or what have you. So rating factor is important. You need to take a peek at that because that'll tell you the highest amperage you can be at with your CT, and you want to make sure you don't go over that. Okay? So let's take a peek at the nameplate so far. What have we learned? So we learned that the nominal system voltage is 600 volts. That's easy. Ratio 505. That should be pretty easy for everybody. We go down and we see that this is a rating factor 2 at 85 degrees. So we know that it can go to 1000 amps at 85 degrees. So we know what the maximum rated current is. We poke down here to accuracy. We're going to see we're a 0.15 S with a burden of 0.2. So we know that's a special high accuracy CT. Now I'm going to pop over here to this area right here on the nameplate. This actually says it operates at 1% of rated current to rating factor. Now, what does that mean? Well, we're going to see that in a little bit. This means that it's a high accuracy extended range CT. And how do I know that? Well, because a high accuracy extended range can go all the way down to 1% of the rated current. Rated current is 500 on this CT. So we're going to talk about that in detail, but this box right here lets me know the window of accuracy for this CT. So this is telling me that this CT can do 0.15% accuracy from 1% of the rated current to rating factor. That means it can go from 5 amps, right? 1% of rated current, 5 amps, all the way up to the rating factor. In this case, a 2, it'd be 1,000 amps. So this can go from 5 to 1,000 amps at 0.15% accuracy. Now, this is a big deal, right? This is technology now that we have been doing for about 10 years now in the industry, where we can get these very wide, highly accurate measurements now with CTs. So this is a technology that is now being used by all the major manufacturers, but it came out about 10 years ago. So we're going to talk about that in detail. So we're going to just keep this in mind, this 1% all the way up to the rating factor. All right, I'm going to pause for a second. There's a couple of questions coming in. Would you be able to send the presentation? Yes, I'll send this out to everybody after the presentation. Wouldn't that minimum of 10 amps? No, this is at 1%, so it'll get down to 5 amps. Okay, we'll keep going. Thank you, Ryan. 1% of rating factor 2. No, that's 1% of the rated current. So not the rating factor, 1% of the nominal current. So in this case, it's 500 to 5. You do 1% of that. So it would be 5 amps. Okay, next slide. So one other thing I'll just present to you about the about sort of the characteristics of a CT. There's some things that we always talk about. One thing is called dot to pot, and hopefully you can see this, but there's a white dot on the H1 side of a CT. That is going to go towards your power source, right? So that's going to go to your potential. And then the H2, which is the opposite side, that's going to go toward your load, if you will. All right. So the H1 dot to pot, that's something that everybody in the industry, that's kind of a common expression in the industry. Okay. And then on the secondary side, you don't see it in this picture, but let me see if I can pop this cap off. So usually you'll see the X1 will have a white line on it, and all the manufacturers do this. So X1 goes to the meter. So the X1 terminal goes to the meter, and then you complete the circuit coming back to the X2 terminal. So that's pretty much how they're wired in, all right? So dot to pot, that's another important thing. Oh, by the way, let me go back that one slide. So I shared a bunch of stuff on this nameplate. One thing I didn't share is obviously frequency 60 hertz. That's kind of common in the industry. Also, you'll have an insulation level of 10 kVBIL. That's standard in the industry. Everybody's CTs for secondary CTs are 10 kVBIL, so that's kind of an industry standard. You'll see the style number. So every manufacturer will have a style number, like a part number, and then they'll have a serial number, and that's its birth certificate, right? So that's how you can talk to a manufacturer and say, hey, I've got this CT, here's its serial number, and they should be able to bring up all the test data. So for peak demand, we have all this in an automated system, so we can pull up all the test data for that CT based on that serial number. We'll know all of its life history, where it came from, how it was manufactured, the dirt from which it came, right? So that gives you all your traceability right there. And then at the bottom here, you just see you just see the data manufacturer, you'll see the standard it was tested to, and then maybe some other customer stuff. So it should be pretty simple now. When you look at a nameplate, you should be able to nail down everything that's on this nameplate, hopefully, if I've done my job right. Okay. So let's dive into the standards just a little bit, because I think those are really critically important to understand the difference between a standard accuracy CT and a high accuracy extended range, because that really will open your eyes to this technology and why you should consider it if you're not using high accuracy extended range just yet. All right. So this is, I'm going to move this dialog box out of the way just a bit. Here we go. Hopefully you can see that. So this is what looks like, this is how a 0.3 class or a standard accuracy CT, this is how a standard accuracy CT performs, okay? So if you're at, so let's just assume this is a 100:5 ratio CT, okay? So at 100 amps, at primary amp, and to the rating factor, so assume this has a rating factor of 4, from 100 amps on the primary to 400 amps on the primary, you are going to have 0.3% accuracy, plus or minus 0.3%. So you have very good accuracy when you're at the 100 to 400 amps. So you're at your nominal current all the way up to your rating factor, all right? That's your window of performance. That's where you want your CT to be sized, okay? So we've got almost 100 people on the call right now. So I'm sure there's a couple of old school meter techs on the call, and old school meter techs know that CTs work best between the nominal current, right, 100 amps up to the rating factor. So you always want to be in that window, right? Because the technology of CTs, the core, if you will, when your currents start dropping below your nominal current, so below that 100 amps, you don't have enough current to drive the secondary. So your accuracy starts getting a little flaky, okay? And then when you get below 10 amps, well, then all bets are off, right? You no longer can predict what the accuracy of that CT is. So you kind of get a little squirrely, all right? So keep in mind, so when you're at 100 amps to 400 amps, you're in that 0.3%. That's that revenue grade that you have to be in to be able to meter properly for a customer. When you drop below 100 amps, like right here, you actually go to 0.6%. So you're actually not, you shouldn't be using that to meter customers with. You're actually at only indicating class. So that's why old school meter techs know you gotta be up here, right? If you wanna perform, you've gotta be in this 100 to 400 amps, right? So old school meter techs, and I know when you're old school, when you call me up and you say you want when you tell me you want like a very low ratio CT, you say you want 100:5 ratio CT, and then you want a very high rating factor, you want a rating factor of 4, you're telling me that you understand this window, right? And you want to make sure you kind of fall into that window, all right? So typically guys that have been in the industry a long time want a low ratio with a high rating factor, all right? Now, let me tell you what the new school guys look for. And let me pause just real quickly. There is a question on here. I want to answer that. So if CT is 0.15, then it's 90. Yes. So the question is, if a CT rating is 0.15%, then it is 98. No, that's not right. It's not 98.5 accurate. It's whatever that is. It's 99.85, right? So yeah, okay. All right, so the old school guys know this curve, right? So they know they have to try to get into this window. Now, here's what the new school guys, this is, sometimes I call this the flip phone, right? This is old school phone. This is what everybody was used to for years and years and years. Well, 10 years ago, a new technology came out and we're able to do something pretty dramatic. And hopefully I can get to the next slide here. Okay, we're stuck again. All right, here we go. All right, So this is the new, I'm going to move this box here. This is the new class of CTs. These are the high accuracy extended range class. First of all, you notice that in the 100 to 400 level, they're already performing at a better accuracy. So they're already plus or minus 0.5%. So they're running at that special high accuracy. And the other thing is, when you drop below 100 amps, right? You know, when you started to lose it with the old style CTs, with the flip phone style CTs, you don't lose it anymore. You're able to keep that high accuracy all the way down to 1% of the rated current. So in this case, it'd be 1%. So before your CT, when it dropped below 100 amps, you started getting squirrely and you started to lose your accuracy. This new technology uses a different type of steel inside the core. So inside of the CT, you're using what's called a nanocrystalline material for the core instead of just typical transformer core steel. And that's what's given you that ability to drive current at very low primary amperages, all right? So what it means is that sizing a CT suddenly got easier, right? You weren't having to fight and worry about that 100 to 400 window, right? You're now getting, you know, double the accuracy for a much larger window of opportunity. So that's why these high accuracy extended range CTs are really a breakthrough technology when it comes to metering CTs. So, and I would say probably 80% of utilities now have moved in this direction. There's still a lot of people that are kind of saying, oh, well, I'll wait and see. Well, you know, it's 10 years in, maybe it's time to see if it works for you. But a lot of people have switched. They really do like this technology, but it is substantially better than what we used to use for the past 40 years. All right, so let's go to the next slide. So another way to look at this, just another view of this, is that your 0.3 accuracy class, you know, below 10%, all bets are off. You can't guarantee the performance. From 10% to 100%, you're at that 0.6%. So you're at this indicating only. So you aren't even supposed to meter that. And then above 100 to your rating factor, you're in that window that we're trying to get to. Now skip these two, go all the way down to the bottom, and you'll see the high accuracy extended range. You get from 1%, right, all the way up to your rating factor. You get that higher, that beautiful 0.15% accuracy. So essentially, you really have a much better product when you come into this high accuracy extended range class. All right. All right. So how does this benefit you as a utility, right? So why does it matter? Why should you care? Well, the biggest thing that utilities have told me and over the years, and I've been producing and selling these for the last 10 years, is that having this very large window, right, of high accuracy means that they can have less part numbers on hand. So typical utility will carry, you know, up to 5 different styles of CTs, right, to try to get that. What they're trying to do, the old school meter techs, the guys have been around a long time, they're trying to get that dark blue window. That's their ideal window. So they're trying to size the CT just perfectly. So in this case, you've got this particular CT, which is 100 to 5 CT. Their window is, his window is 100 to 400 amps. And when he's in that window, he's happy. Outside that window, he's in trouble, right? Or she's in trouble. A 200 to 5, well, you have a bigger window here, right? But you're only good from 200 to 800 amps. So well, maybe I need a 400 to 5, right? So you go from 400 to 1200, that's your accuracy. And then you can see what happens as you go up. But you could replace all 5 of these CTs with a 600 to 5 high accuracy extended range, and you can get from 6 amps, right, all the way up to 1200 amps at that special high accuracy, 0.15%. So instead of fighting it, instead of trying to, sorry, I'm gonna take a little drink here. Instead of fighting it, you can get to, you can get a much higher accuracy over a much larger range. And that's the benefit of the high accuracy extended range. You can carry less part numbers. So that's really one of the benefits. All right. Next thing is, when you have the high axis extended range CT, you do better at capturing that low, the low currents, right? So when you have a variable or you have low currents, you're better able to pick it up with the high axis extended range. Think about that. So say that you've done your best to size your CT and you've got this CT right here, this 405 CT, right? And you're measuring, I don't know, ballpark. When it's in use, you're in these ranges and you're picking up at 0.3. But over the weekend, you might have just a little bit of, lower loads, and you start dropping down into this less than 400 amp range. And so you really don't know what you're measuring when you're down in that below the nominal current on that CT. So if things start getting squirrely, you really shouldn't be using that for metering, but yet you are, because that's the size that the CT that you have in that application. Now, if in that same place you had a 600:5 ratio CT, you could drop below 400 amps. You can go all the way down to 6 amp, and you're still picking up the load properly and measuring it properly, and you can use it for metering. So on variable loads or low loads, or maybe loads you're not sure about. So how many times have you had a new construction job where they tell you what the load is going to be, and it never achieves that load, right? The whatever the commercial application is, it never fills out, and you never actually get to those loads. So you end up in these lower loads where your accuracy starts to get suspect. So high accuracy extended range do a better job picking up the low and the variable loads. So that's another benefit for the utility. One thing I like about high accuracy extended range is that you have fewer meter multipliers. And one thing meter techs have told me over the years is that when you screw up a meter multiplier, that's a little bit embarrassing. You got to go back to the customer and you got to sort out the money situation. The nice thing is when you have one CT like this that has one meter multiplier, you have that throughout your system, and you don't have to remember what your meter multiplier is across the board. I'm going to stop here. There's a question. So do you have a feel for utilities of what revenue improvement have been when moving to high accuracy extended range? Yes. There's been a number of different studies over the years, and I have some slides on that. I'm going to cover it when I get there, but you're talking of close to 1%. It obviously depends on the applications, the loads that you're measuring, but it's in the 0.75% club that you'll be able to pick up more revenue on the or more load on these high accuracy extended range CTs. Okay. Whoops. I think that's probably my slide too. Hold on one second. Let me see what's going on. We're stuck. Okay. And actually, this is the slide I was talking about that we're going to talk about. And that is, this is one study that was done. This was done in Tennessee. They looked at 3 different load profiles. One was a large church, one was a small church, one was a ball field. And they put in line, they had a standard CT and they put a high accuracy extended range CT in line. And then they compared the results, and whatever. I'm having trouble with my slides. I apologize, guys. I'm really good at making CTs. I'm not so good at running this webinar, apparently. So and you can see in this case, this particular, they were able to get about 0.25% to 1% more revenue being picked up, and mostly because these were variable loads. And so you're going to get better performance on the high accuracy extended range CTs when you have a variable load profile. That's where you're going to see it's the biggest amount of benefit. All right, and then just some customer testimonials, and the customers that I've worked with over the years that have switched over, they've been able to see that benefit. All right, so we're going to wrap up. I'll ask a few questions, and this is going to be hard to do. I didn't think about this, but here's an example of some of the questions you should be able to answer now that you've been through this training. So a 605 CT with a rating factor of 4, What is the most important, what's the most current you can put through it? What's that highest continuous current that you can put through it? And I see answers, hands are coming up. All right, where's my chat? I lost my chat. Yeah, 2400, that's, hey, worked pretty good. That's pretty awesome. Yeah, the answer is 2400, and that's, how do you get that? You multiply 600 times the rating factor 4, so you get 2400 amps, all right? So at 2400 amps on the primary, how many amps will be on the secondary? It does depend on the temperature too. So this question, 2400 amps on the primary, how many amps on the secondary? Uh-oh, I lost everybody. This one's hard. 20, 120, 150, 25, 5. Damn, I did a bad job training you guys. All right, let's do this. What's the meter multiplier for a 600 to 5 CT? Yeah, I'm seeing a lot of right answers now. So the rate, so how do you, okay, so the rating, the meter multiplier is 600 divided by 5. So what is the meter multiplier? So it's 120. And you divide 120 by 2400 amps, that's how you get your secondary. So you get your 20 amps. What do you guys think? Can we do that again? Or do you get it? All right, I see a Q&A coming up here. All right. 20. Okay, someone just put it in there. All right. So so that's how you do it. So a 600 to 5 ratio CT, right? With a rating factor of 4, you're going to get up to 2400 amps. You can run up to 2400 amps. And then your meter multiplier is 120, right? So that's 600 divided by 5, that's 120. So then if you get a 2400 amps on the primary, you know you got to divide that by 120 to get to your secondary current. So that's where that comes from. So if you ever get confused, figure out the meter multiplier first, and then you can easily do the conversion. All right, now with a high accuracy extended range CT, do you need to have a low ratio and a high rating factor to get that wide window, that beautiful window that you're looking for? This isn't a trick question. Yes. Or you're saying no. No is the right answer. Yes. Yes or no. Correct. I should say correct. So right, with the and my thing froze again. Okay. That's right. No, you don't need that because you have that wide window already. That's part of the technology. You can go all the way down to 1% up to the rating factor at that very, very high accuracy. Right. So you don't need to go with that old school approach of low ratios and high rating factors. Will a high accuracy CT get you more revenue for the utility? Yes. Correct. Correct. John is right, Jeffrey. Oh no, come on, Jeffrey. I did a terrible job teaching this class. Yeah, so what it is if you have a variable load or low loads, you're going to pick up more revenue. You're going to pick up more of the load on the low end, on the variable end. So the answer to that is yes. And you could say it depends. It could depend on the load profile. But you got to remember this too, guys, is that the load profile is dynamic. And a lot of times we size our CTs based on a static calculation. We're like, oh, it's probably going to use 300 amps. Well, when is that? Is that at noon? Is that on Sundays? Is that on, only 3 days a week? So remember that all your load profiles are dynamic. So you really want to have a product that can, or a CT that can handle that wider range of performance. Okay, and what's another benefit? So this is a extra credit question. It's not multiple choice. So what's another benefit of having a high accuracy extended range CT? What could that give you as a benefit? Less inventory, yeah, less part numbers. Thank you, Kevin. Others? Less inventory. One multiplier. Thank you, Jess. Okay. Excellent. And we're frozen up again, I think. Hold on. All right. Yeah. So one answer could be lower number of inventory SKUs, right? Or lower number of part numbers. All right. So that's the presentation that I want to go through today. We kept it under an hour, so I'll open it up for questions, and we'll do that probably on the chat, and then I can talk to those questions. Actually, I've got a few on the Q&A side up here, so I just want to say, see what those say. 20 less inventory needed, yes. Would you be able to touch on how the burden testing helps with the accuracy of the CT? Can the CT accuracy drift over time? Does burden testing help bring that back in range? Well, I will tell you that burden is, we talked a little bit about burden, but when you see on a rating, you're going to see the accuracy and then the burden. It's going to be right. It's going to be right there. And so this particular one is a burden of 0.2. And so yes, so you want to make sure that you don't have a burden problem in your circuit. So typically, though, with short leads that we have in the industry and modern meters, you typically don't have a burden problem. But you want to make sure, like say you have a unique situation where very long leads, you have maybe your meter is in another building or what have you, and you're just going to run a bunch of leads out there. Yeah, you're going to want to make sure that you have you can drive that current down the secondary to be able to drive that meter. But in most cases with short leads, you're not going to have that problem. Can CT accuracy drift over time? Well, I'll answer that one first. And no, they will not drift over time. Once this is encapsulated into the CT. So it used to be that you could magnetize the cores. Sometimes that can happen, but that's pretty rare. Especially in nanocrystalline, you're not going to have that problem at all. So you're not going to drift. Does burden testing help bring it back? Yeah, that was one of the things you used to do when you get a magnetized core. You can use burden testing to bring it back, but that's not an issue with the modern CTs as much. And I don't think you can do that with a nanocrystalline core at all. So another question: Do I have a formula? For sizing CTs to customer load, switch size? No, I don't have a formula, but what you want to do is you want to make sure the biggest thing is to be able to handle that higher end of the current, right? So you want to know that maximum current that CT could possibly see. So you don't want to exceed that for any length of time because you actually could damage the CT. So the first thing is that rating factor, is making sure you have that high end locked in, right? And then you want to look at what your standard loads profile is going to look like over time. So there's not necessarily a formula, but you really want to have as broad a window as you can to be able to handle the loads that you'll have on that particular account. So I don't know that I have a formula per se, but let me give you one example of something you can do. And I don't have one in my office right now, but like, for example, we have a 500-5, one of the overhead style, the ones that you would see up on a pole, 500-5 that has a rating factor of 4. And so that particular CT can go from 2,000 amps all the way down to 5 amps. And what we've seen is some utilities will actually just standardize on that. We call that the holy grail. It's actually a -H in the part number. And so some people use that to replace all of their overhead. So they only have one CT for the whole overhead performance because it can go from 2,000 amps to 5 amps. And that covers most people's performance or most people what they see on the primary side of amperage. Oh, how does an incidental open circuit on a secondary affect the CT? Incidental, probably not a problem. Over a long period of time, it can damage the CT. That's probably not a good thing to have happen. Can you touch on the dangers of opening? Yeah, we were talking about that. So it doesn't like, CTs they don't like to have load and no place to go on the secondary. So you know, it's like well, it's just not good. So you can damage the CT if you do that for any length of time. Incidental is not a problem, but over time it could be bad. Okay, I've had some people drop off, so I think we're getting close to the end. One thing I want to share before we drop off, is, so if you want to get in touch with us, we are in the middle of this pandemic crisis. We are in full production. We are producing products for utilities around the country. We're running 100%. So for us, CTs, we ship in 24 hours. So we, our 90% of our jobs, our CTs actually ship in 24 hours. So if you need something quick, we usually can do it. So there's our numbers, 844-PEAK 24/7 or 252-360-277, or you can email us at customerservice@peakdemand.com. You can reach me at jrennie@peakdemand.com if you have any questions beyond this particular training. But hopefully this has been good, and hopefully you got something out of it. And if you did, shoot me an email. We might want to try to do these things once a month or maybe every other month for people who didn't get a chance to participate today. So, and I'm going to just see if there's any more questions on here. Yeah, saturated, demagnetized. I'll talk a little bit about that, but that's more of a problem with standard accuracy CTs, less of a problem with the nanocrystalline cores or the high accuracy extended range units. So thank you, everybody. Be safe out there, and you know, good luck with your utilities and with dealing with this coronavirus. And if you need anything, please give me a call, shoot me an email, and I appreciate all your attention. Thank you very much.